Do you think, Ben, he's really sorry, or he just was pressured into saying so?
No, I think he wanted to make sure that he didn't hurt anybody that he supports on the campaign trail. We talked a little bit earlier before the interview for a second, and you could tell in his voice he wishes he would not have used those words, as he put it 40 days earlier. He also said to me that, you know, when you're saying something like he does, he doesn't like the president. That's obvious. He's a rock star guy. Take that in consideration and context here. And he's a guy that loves a camera and loves to give people the soundbite. And he said afterwards, I've learned from political people around me. I learned that this probably hurt people. And I am apologizing and will not use those words in the future. So from a rock star, as he put it to me, this is the first time I think he's ever apologized for anything he's ever said in his career. And he said a lot of things in his career. So for me, it was a different side of Ted Nugent.
Interesting. Chris, what's your take? Because it sounds like from what Ben's describing, it was a tactical apology because his words hurt people who are running for office, not an apology that he actually, you know, didn't mean what he said.
I think it may be the worst apology I've ever heard anyone give. I mean, he didn't apologize. I mean, to be honest about it, you saw in the beginning what he said, not necessarily to the president. And then when Ben finally pushed him, he said yes to the apology that Ben articulated. He never said the words, I apologize to the President of the United States. I mean, at the end of the day, this is really not so much about, you know, Ted Nugent and people like him. It really is about, you know, Greg Abbott and politicians that surround themselves by individuals that really are this extreme, this radical in terms of their rhetoric and their language, and then have a real difficulty disabusing themselves of them or making it clear that they don't agree with it and condemning it. You saw some Republicans come out very forthright, Senator Paul, Senator McCain. I think that was smart. But for whatever reason, Greg Abbott still has not done that, and I have a feeling that's going to continue to haunt him in his race for governor.
I mean, they're torn. Go ahead, Ben.
I think it's pretty clear that the Greg Abbott campaign, if they would have known this video was out there, would not have had him come with him at this campaign stop.
Well, Ben, you say that.
Let me finish.
No,
I've actually talked to campaign members. Hold on. I've talked to people at the campaign. I've been dealing with this for about 48 hours with everyone who's involved, from Wendy Davis's people to Greg Abbott's people to my show at Ted Nugent Today. So I know a little bit about the history here. They had talked to Nugent about coming to do this, specifically in a quick decision after Wendy Davis flip-flopped on guns. That's why it happened, from what I've been told about. And they obviously did not know this quote was out there. And if they would have known it was out there, they probably would not have asked him to come. Obviously, now they definitely wouldn't have asked him to come. And I think Ted Nugent today felt bad about that.
Let me ask you a question, Ben, because, you know, he then, Ted Nugent continued on your show because you said, well, if you had the chance to talk to President Obama, what would you tell him right now? And he went off and called him a liar. He's called him an idiot before to our Deb Farrick.
Yeah.
I mean, so Greg Abbott was totally fine having a guy come and introduce him who had called the president a liar and an idiot and a whole lot of other things. I mean, subhuman mongrels seem to be the line, but I mean, it's the tone of what Ted Nugent said is no different than what he said before.
Look, this is what Ted said today. He said the President of the United States of America walked out there when people died in Benghazi, and he made up a fictitious story about a fake video and made up a story about why these protests happened on the anniversary of 9/11 to cover his rear end in a re-election. He says that's lying. He says Susan Rice lied. The president lied. Even Hillary Clinton lied. So that's when he talks about him being a liar. He says, I don't trust him on stories like that when Americans actually died serving this country, including an ambassador. Put it in the context of that, it's not like he's just running around saying the guy's a liar. He specifically talked about that incident and said, I can't trust him because he lied to us on that story.
And a lot of other things.
I mean, sure, he's a rock star. His name's Ted Nugent. He's a crazy guy. I don't need to fit him on that.
Wait a second. You know, you diminish everything. You know, when you say he's a rock star, you're diminishing the role and significance he plays. You know, where he has been a surrogate for Republicans, and in this particular case,
he's an influential, powerful guy with a lot of people in that party, and that's important to say. Right.
And he is a surrogate for Greg Abbott, and it's not the point about what the Abbott campaign knew 30 or 40 days ago when this statement was said, is when it finally did come out, they did not come out, and they have yet to come out, unless I'm mistaken, and make it very clear that it is an awful remark, and it should be condemned. And they would not campaign with Ted Nugent again. They have not said that, have they, Ben?
All right. Well, I do want to note that Ted Nugent, of course, was supposed to appear on this program on Wednesday night. As many of you know, he canceled a couple of hours before the show, and he got some grief from that. Ben asked him about that, and I wanted to play for all of you what he had to say about this program.
There's nothing to be afraid of with Erin Burnett. She's a sweetheart. She's a reasonably professional journalist that doesn't take a hateful attitude.
We have rescheduled Ted Nugent for Monday, and I look forward to talking to him.
And Aaron, he wanted me to tell you he cannot wait to spend time in your presence on Monday. That was his exact text to me earlier. He said, tell her I said congratulations on the new baby to her and her husband, and I'm looking forward to Monday.